Hi, my name's Phil Moeller. I'm a contributing editor to U.S. News and World Report, where I write about aging and money and retirement. I'm joined today by Elizabeth Dunn, who is an associate professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia, and by Michael Norton, an associate professor of marketing at the Harvard Business School. Their book, Happy Money, has just been released. It makes a persuasive case that money has the ability to buy happiness in some cases, and it just depends not on how much money you have, but perhaps on how you spend it that matters. So first of all, Liz and Mike, thanks so much for joining us. And I wanted to start out today by asking Liz why she wanted you guys to write this book.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us. And I first became interested in writing this book when I got my first real job. After spending almost 25 years in school, I suddenly found myself with a real grown-up income. But as a happiness researcher, I knew that the relationship between income and happiness isn't all that strong. So I wondered, with my newfound wealth, how I could use this money to actually get more happiness. So like any good academic nerd, I turned to the research literature for answers, but I didn't find many. There was a little bit of information, a few hints, but no clear sort of research program telling me what I could do with my money to be happier. So Mike and I began doing some research on that topic, and before long we realized that other people were interested in this too. And so I kind of talked Mike into writing this book with me, and we began by really thinking about the best research-supported principles that people could actually apply in order to get more happiness for their money. And we wanted to think not just about rich people and how they could be even happier with their, mounds of wealth, but also about ordinary people like ourselves. And we wondered, how could you change even how you spend as little as $5 to be happier on a given day? And that really provided the kind of jumping off point for the book.
That's great. So Mike, tell us a little bit about what you found and sort of some of the principles that you were laying out in the book.
So actually, first I just want to say that I think I'm extraordinary, not ordinary, but I'm not. No, I don't. So the very first thing that we did actually was to think about, we looked at what people usually do with their money. So we said, if we want to think about changing the way people spend, well, what do they do? So we looked around to figure out, and we looked at ourselves and we said, what do we usually spend our money on? And it turns out what we usually spend our money on is ourselves. We tend to buy ourselves stuff. And there's not really anything wrong with that. So it's nice to have a house. It's nice to have a car. It's nice to have a TV. It's nice to have those things for your family and for your friends and things like that. So we didn't think it was wrong the way we were spending our money necessarily, but we realized that we continually spend it on the same kinds of things, on stuff for ourselves. And we thought, well, what's the most radical thing we can do to change the way people use their money? And there's a lot. So we could have said, take all your money and put it in a pile and burn it. Or we could have said, buy a hot air balloon. Or we could have told people all kinds of crazy things to do with their money and see if it made them any happier. And we thought, well, maybe let's start with the most radical thing we could think of, which is, instead of spending it on somebody else, why don't you try to spend it on somebody else? So rather than always focusing at yourself and what you need, what if we made people give more of it away to other people? And then maybe we could measure their happiness afterward and see which one wins. Is it better to buy for yourself, or is it better to buy for other people?
So you based all of your work, I think, on similar experiments. So this is really sort of social science approach to being happy with how you use your money. And lay out for us the sort of the 5 principles that you lay out in the book. Jump right in here.
Well, why don't I start? So one of the first principles is buy experiences. So it turns out that we get more happiness from buying experiences, things like concerts, special meals, trips, than we do from buying material things like couches, flat screen TVs, even houses turn out to provide a disappointing amount of happiness. So we're better off actually investing in that trip to Paris or that amazing meal out than buying more lasting material things. Mike, you want to take the next one?
Sure. So the one that I was referring to when I was speaking is one where we call this principle invest in others. And the idea here is basically it's not that we don't spend our money on other people now. A lot of people are very generous, but actually we can spend a little bit more of our money on other people. So when we do experiments and make people spend $5, $20, small amounts of money on other people, they actually get happier. And it really is about feeling like you're having an impact on other people's lives. So when you spend and buy yourself a coffee, it's nice and it's a tasty coffee. But when you buy a coffee for somebody else, you're actually giving them an experience, making them happier, and that can make you happier as well.
It also was interesting to me that and some of the other principles involve social connections a lot. And it turns out that connecting to other people tends to be a major determinant of happiness. So in effect, you're talking about spending money in a connected way.
Absolutely, and I think that ties in with one of our other principles, which is buy time. So it's amazing, but wealthier individuals, on average, don't actually spend their time in happier ways on a day-to-day basis. So obviously what makes one person happy and what makes another person happy differ to some extent, but most people enjoy spending time with their family more than they enjoy commuting. So you'd think you could use your money to spend more time with your family and perhaps spend less time commuting. So when people reach for their wallets, we suggest that one of the first things they should do is ask themselves, will this purchase change the way I use my time? And if it's something that will help you spend, say, more time with your family and less time commuting, it's probably a good use of money.
One of the other principles that interests me a lot also is this idea of instead of buy now, pay later, it's pay now and consume later. Mike, could you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. This one is actually very, very hard for people, and by people I mean me, to put into practice. So one of the great things about credit cards is that we can buy whatever we want right now, and eat it right now and consume it right now and watch it right now. We can get any video, we can get any snack we want, and we pay for it some nebulous time many, many months from now, and we don't have to worry about it. And that feels great because we get everything we want right now, and the pain of paying comes months and months away. The problem is that that's exactly wrong for happiness. So the best thing you can do actually is pay for things before you do them. So if you go on vacation, rather than paying as you go, where every single drink you have to take out your cash, take out your credit card, and feel that pain, it's much better to buy the vacation ahead of time, have that pain fade from memory, and then just enjoy the experience. And it's also much better to wait to consume things. And that's a really, really hard one for people to do because things are so good that we want them right away. But it turns out that if you wait for a little while, you get a whole other source of happiness that we often underestimate, which is anticipation. Anticipation is one of the best things that humans have, where if we know something good is coming to us, the time before it comes is almost as good as the time when it happens because we get so excited about it. And the example that Liz and I always use is little kids on Christmas morning. The best part of Christmas for little kids is actually the day before, when they're insanely excited about what's going to happen. Once they get the thing on Christmas morning, they basically throw it out and play with a box. And we know it with little kids, and we do it for them all the time. We make them wait, and we get them all excited. But for ourselves, once we have our credit cards, we just buy whatever we want and consume it right away. So Liz and I actually try to buy things ahead of time and make ourselves wait for them, and it makes us a lot happier in the end.
Except we don't want to do that with the book, do we?
No, buy that right away.
Actually, one of the things we tell people to do, believe it or not, is pre-order things. Pay for it a month before, and then when it shows up in your mailbox, it feels like it's free. It feels amazingly great that you got this free book because you kind of forgot the pain of paying for it so long ago.
Gotcha. So the last, if I recall, the last of the principles you talk about is called treat me. So talk about treat me.
Sure. So we kind of stole this principle to some extent from Sarah Silverman. So Sarah Silverman, of course, is a comedian, former Saturday Night Live writer, and she argues that when it comes to her favorite things, she tries to make it a treat. So she has recognized that things that she loves, that she has all the time, stop delivering the kind of pleasure that they once did. And so it turns out that this is actually not just the musings of a comedian, but also an idea that's really well supported by science. And I think, one of the wonderful, amazing things about modern society is also kind of the curse of modern society, which is that we do have such unfettered, abundant access to the things that we like. For example, we can get so many different kinds of food so easily just by going into a gas station. And so in one of our experiments, for example, we actually had people give chocolate up for a week, and we found that that really increased their capacity to enjoy it. So ironically, rather than trying to have all of our favorite things all of the time, we may be better off actually having those favorite things less often, which can save us money along the way.
That's great. Well, listen, it's been a treat, to borrow a word, to spend some time with you today, and I look forward to maybe chatting with you down the road. Any last thoughts before we ring off?
I would just say that the kinds of changes that we're talking about, Liz mentioned this earlier, but they're not for millionaires. They're for everyday experiences and everyday purchases. So changing the way you spend just a couple of dollars every day, a coffee for someone else instead of yourself, giving up that food today and having it tomorrow, these little tiny changes actually can lead to a real change in your happiness.
And Liz, the next time you go shopping for good food in a gas station, I want to come along and see.
You'd be amazed by what I can do with a gas station.
Anyway, thanks so much for joining us.